All right, Rule 15 is acquiring the right-of-way. So it says, when a boat acquires the right-of-way, she shall initially give the other boat room to keep clear, unless she acquires the right-of-way because of that other boat's actions. So if you make a change to your course that gives you the right-of-way, you have to give that other boat room to keep clear. It's a very reasonable thing. You can't create impossible situations. So this is why you can't jam your boat into a small hole on the starting line and immediately say you should have gotten out of my way. This is why you can't yell tacking and slam your boat into somebody. And the only time clause here is initially. So that initially, we're going to forget about room and opportunity. We've heard that in a lot of rules talks in the past, and you might hear people talk about that on the race course. Now we have the definition of room and mark room, and they eliminated that word opportunity because it implied something about time, and now we've replaced that with the word initially. So let's talk about the small hole on the starting line. In this case, a bunch of boats are lined up, and there isn't much room for Green, but Green says, you know what, I'm going to go in there, and I'll be the lured boat, and they have to make a hole for me. So when she does, Blue protests, as does Yellow. So Blue alleges that Green did not keep clear. She can't turn both directions without immediately making contact. Yellow alleges that Green broke Rule 15 and didn't initially give Yellow room to keep clear. So let's look at Rule 15 and the definition of room and keep clear. When the boat acquires the right-of-way, which Green did as soon as she overlapped Yellow, she shall initially give the other boat room to keep clear unless she acquires the right-of-way because of the other boat's actions. Let's take a look at the last part of the rule, unless she acquires the right-of-way because of the other boat's actions. Was this created because of Yellow's actions? Absolutely not. This happened because Green sailed in underneath Yellow. Yellow was minding her own business on the starting line, sailing a steady course. Nothing she did created this. This is caused by Green sailing in. So, what is room? The space a boat needs in existing conditions, including space to comply with her obligations under the rules of Part 2 and Rule 31, while maneuvering promptly in a seaman-like way. So let's break that down. Does she have the space in the existing conditions to comply with her obligations of Rule 11, which is a rule of Part 2? No, if she turns immediately, there's going to be contact because Yellow's transom will swing into Green. So what she is required to do is to act promptly and in a seaman-like way, which means she can't wait for 10 seconds, let this get closer, and then say, I don't have room to comply. That's also why the word initially is in there. As soon as that overlap is started, then Green has the right-of-way and Yellow has to start reacting if there's room to do so. In this case, there isn't. But it's very important that as soon as that overlap is established by Green, that Yellow promptly takes some action to try to keep clear. At the same time, Green has to give Yellow room, which she did not. So, definition of keep clear is you can turn the boat in both directions without immediately making contact, which neither Blue or Yellow can do. And since that happened, Green did not keep clear of Yellow or Blue, and Green did not initially give room to keep clear to Yellow. So Green is penalized. Next scenario is going upwind. Yellow decides I'm tacking, turns over her shoulder and yells tacking, and immediately throws the tiller over. So what rules apply here? Blue says, you broke Rule 15. Yellow says, I gave you plenty of time. I said tacking. So let's look at Rule 15. Acquiring the right-of-way. When did Yellow acquire the right-of-way here? The answer to that is as soon as she reached a close-hauled course, because until then, Rule 13 applied. So she was bound to keep clear of Blue from the moment she passed head to wind until she was on a close-hauled course. At that moment, Yellow acquired the right-of-way over Blue. At that moment, a collision was imminent and there was nowhere for Blue to go. There was no room for Blue to act promptly in a seaman-like way and avoid that collision. Blue does not have to anticipate that Yellow is going to come out of that tack and start turning early. She is not bound to do anything to keep clear until Yellow is on there, and she must have room to do so. So in this case, Yellow did not give Blue room to keep clear. Rule 10 does not turn on until Rule 13 turns off, and the hail of tacking doesn't change any of this. We talked earlier about those required hails, and the hail of tacking is nowhere in there. You know, it may be a courtesy, but you still have to comply with all the rest of the rules. So in this case, Yellow is penalized. Well, let's take a look at this scenario, which talks about the initially clause. These two scenarios, one over the other, are identical in terms of the way the boats interact with one another. We're going to assume here that absolutely in both cases, at position 2, when blue gets the overlap on yellow, there is not room for yellow to turn to windward without immediately making contact. So there's a foul in both of these scenarios. On the bottom, right at position 2, yellow hails protest. On the top, wait till 10 seconds later to hail protest with yellow. If these come into a protest room, because of that word initially, it's going to be easy for the jury to assume that at that initial point there was room because the hail of protest wasn't made until later. So we're talking about this because the initially is important. If you believe it's a foul, you should hail protest right away to protect your own rights. Or you might lose that protest in the room later, and you don't want to do that because it was really the other boat's foul. Okay, so the question was, we said initially at position 2 that there was a foul. And why wouldn't the jury be inclined in both scenarios, whenever the hail of protest was, to make that happen? If there's video, absolutely they would. If it's two guys telling the story, it is likely that blue would say, what do you mean initially? You didn't even hail protest until we had sailed 6 boat lengths. Of course there was room. You had time in that 6 boat lengths to get clear of me, then we came together. So if you believe there's a foul, it's incumbent upon you to say protest right away. I also might, as a protest committee, dismiss this protest because you didn't hail protest immediately if you sailed for that long and you believe the foul happened a while ago. So it's very important, for that initially to be in force for you to hail protest quite promptly. As a recap, Rule 15 says that when a boat acquires the right-of-way, she shall initially give the other boat room to keep clear unless she acquires the right-of-way because of the other boat's actions. And to suss this out, we looked at it and we said, this is why you can't jam your boat into a crowded starting line. This is why you can't yell tacking and then slam into someone. And the only time clause here is initially.